welcome to VIA's Support Raising Podcast. We're excited to bring you a special series that is pulled from recordings related to our Support Raising Leaders Conference in 2026. These are our workshop speakers and their expert level content, but we wanted to pull out some of the specific topics and speakers because their content applied to such a broader audience and we didn't want you to miss out. I'm your host today, Callie Davis, and I'm a part of the VIA Generosity team here in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and I am thrilled to be joined by Sarah Strickland. Sarah is a fundraising coaching director with Youth Dynamics. She's been with them since 2001 and began coaching new and veteran staff in 2007. But what I found really interesting as we're recording this is just past Pi Day, March 14th. And I know you are a math aficionado, Sarah, so I'm curious, did you get a chance to do anything for Pi Day this year?
I did, Callie. I almost thought I wasn't going to get to make my pie because we had a power outage, but it came back on and I made a delicious chocolate pie.
Oh, very nice, very nice. I feel like I've lost touch of Pi Day since leaving school, so maybe it'll come back around as my kids get older, so we'll see.
Well, every year, March 14th.
It sneaks up on me. It's all right there by the Ides of March and St. Patty's Day and all the things going on.
There's a lot, yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Sarah. I'm excited to have you with us. And
it's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, wonderful. You're here to tackle, honestly, what is a really intriguing topic, coaching fully funded staff to stay fully funded, which I think is often a misconception or like a missed piece, both for coaches and for staff, that transition from the huge effort of raising initial support and people get fully funded and that's so exciting. And then they become full-time staff in the field doing their job. And I feel like that first transition is often, we assume it's going to go well. They got fully funded. They're over the hump. And then we'll circle back to them in a few years when they hit the first few road bumps. But I'm excited to lean into this topic with you today about just actually that first season of them stepping into ministry and its importance. So I'm curious, can you just kind of introduce us of what impact have you seen for this kind of first year or so with new staff?
Yeah. So a staff has worked really hard and they've gotten fully funded. Yay! And they start in the ministry position, and sometimes we assume that they know how to maintain their support over the long haul because they raised their full support, so surely they know how to do it. I have found that it's a slightly different skill set to maintain your support over the long haul than it is in the initial fundraising. Because initial fundraising, you had one job, raise support. Now in your ministry position, you've got support is one of many responsibilities. And so, and the way we start off in our first year, those habits that we build are the ones that stick with us through the whole of our ministry. So the big idea is the habits we start with are the habits we stay with. And so we want to help our new staff start good habits that will stay with them for the next 5, 10, 20 years in ministry.
Yeah. Well, and that really resonates. I've heard it that first year in ministry can be someone's most important for their long-term success with partnership development. And yet it doesn't feel like it's that big of a priority, to be honest, because often people are transitioning into a new country, they're transitioning into a new job, a new role, a new team. There is so many other overwhelming pieces of that first year.
Yeah.
It's easy to understand why support raising and connecting with partners takes a back seat. But I mean, you put so much work in so far. Would you really want to just like lose all that momentum? Like that's just heartbreaking when I think about it, because you've worked so hard to get fully funded. Oof. So I'm curious, like what can, especially as leaders, what can we do to help staff move into that first year well when they are usually beyond overwhelmed at all the things?
Right. So the big thing is to help them build good habits on support, because the habits we start with are the habits we stay with. And so helping them transition well from initial fundraising to their ministry position, helping them schedule time to spend on support, and then training them on what are the pieces of ongoing support that they need to continually put on their schedule and in their
Now,
plan.
I'm curious, do you stay with your staff into their first role? Is that what you and your coaches are doing? Or is that at least what you're recommending?
Yeah, so I meet with new staff for their whole first year. So
Wow.
it starts off monthly for the first 3 months, and then quarterly for the next 3 quarters. So over the course of a year, we meet 6 times, unless they want to meet more. Like we could always schedule extra meetings, and I have a training I take them through in those 6 meetings, so that it stays top of mind, so that they're building good habits as they're in their new positions. And now everything's new. Now's the time to get those new habits in before their schedules fill up. So.
Wow. I'm curious, and I am just so curious, because honestly, I think this is the first time I've heard that idea, that your support raising coach would stay with you after fully funded. None of the coaches I've had have done that. I've never offered to do that for anyone I coached. So I'm curious, as you're connecting with staff, they're fully funded. Is this program that you're taking them through, is it more skill development as you're talking about scheduling and timing, or is it more of that more traditional coaching of like, okay, so what's your plan? How are you planning to move forward? Just more of that really question-based coaching.
Yeah, it's a both and. It involves both of how is your fundraising going? Are you having time with it? What is going well? What is not? Your support time. And then here's some topics I want to cover to give you some more skills for what this looks like for the long haul. Because again, it's different than your initial fundraising.
Wow. My brain is still wrapping around this idea. Do you have any just stories, or what difference have you seen it make to stay with staff for a year?
Yeah. The biggest thing is it becomes a regular habit, that they know that spending time on support is a good thing because I'm asking them about it. That I do this in conjunction with their supervisor too. Like I'm not a lone wolf over here. Like I'm communicating with their supervisor. The coach is communicating with the supervisor through the initial fundraising, and then as they transition to their ministry position, they know they're going to keep meeting with me. If I have concerns, I'm talking to the supervisor. If there's things going really well, I'm talking with the supervisor, so that we're all on the same page on how much time should be spent on support and what they should be doing with that time. And so it's a team effort so that the new staff can build these healthy habits to begin with, and so that they stay with them, so that they're healthy for the long haul.
Oh, that is just giving me so many ideas. I'm curious, just thinking a little broader, as your impact in this process for organizational culture. I'm curious because I think what I felt when I was more in your role in my previous organization was staff were fully funded, and then I was just entrusting them to the field staff. And like that was a totally different task on my list to then develop the team leaders overseas to like, hey, have you checked in with your staff? Like, are they still fully funded? Can I help you with that? Can we talk about that? Like it was 2 totally different fields of momentum. It was 2 totally different strategies that seemed really unrelated. One was the individuals and helping them understand like this is good practices, these are good skills. And then they were off in this totally new world of the field ministry, and I was like just trying to like slowly inch in with the field leaders, like, please like me. I've got a good idea for your staff. And what I'm hearing from you is actually something so much more beautiful. If you get to keep some of that influence on that new staff and have those healthy practices and that healthy culture voice when it comes to partnership development feed upwards from the new staff to the current staff. But then, of course, absolutely working with the leadership as well, because you're the one who's still taking some time for their staff members. You're still taking some time and maybe not putting requirements on them, but helping them prioritize support raising, which at times can feel at odds with ministry work.
Yeah. So it has taken time to build this culture. Like,
Oh, I believe it.
because I've been coaching since 2007, and so it didn't start off as wonderful as it is now. And it's taken time, and now that I've been around long enough, I've coached most staff or in their fundraising, regardless of their position, and so that has grown influence and grown, like, the more staff that start fully funded and stay fully funded and stay here longer, the more everybody's excited about maintaining that. So being able to increase our impact and our reach for more folks to hear about Jesus. So
Well, I do want to keep diving into maybe just like the practicals of what you're helping these staff kind of coach them through in this first year. But first, I am curious, as you talk about it took time to get here to this beautiful plan, what were some of those key incremental steps? Can you think back? Because I'm sure there's a lot of leaders who are like, this sounds amazing. I mean, I think it sounds amazing. And so I'm also curious, okay, you can't go 0 to 60 in no time flat. There are going to be some stages of growth, some incremental goals. What were some for you?
I think, as I've looked back, the first and most important one happened at the first Support Raising Leaders Conference, CLIMB.
Oh, you're taking me back.
And at the closing, one of the questions that was asked was, what are you going to stop doing? What's something you're going to stop doing? And then people were invited to stand up and share. And so I had written down, and then I stood up and said in front of a room of however many people were in that room, I'm going to stop sitting in my office being frustrated with our leadership because they need my compassion, not my frustration. And that felt like the turning point, was the change that happened in my own heart first. Of, instead of just being frustrated the leadership wasn't on board with me, like, I needed to adjust my own heart first towards them, and have compassion and grace and love towards them. And all the things that have happened since then feel like it stems from that moment.
Yeah. Well, and I think you're probably not alone in feeling almost like the leadership, the other leadership in the organization is almost like your adversary. If you are working against everything that they're pushing back on you, that's not uncommon, but it is not helpful, unfortunately. And I love hearing you talk about that shift of heart perspective, because how much of that is just support raising through and through, that where you are standing, what foundation you are moving from is what is going to set your trajectory and how far you can go.
Yeah, totally.
I'm curious, was there any, like, maybe 1 or 2 steps beyond that you can remember? I know.
Yeah. So another big one was the Support Raising Leaders Conference sale in Florida. Our president came to that one.
Fine.
He was new, and we had invited him to come. There were several of us going, and we invited him to come. And that felt like it made a big shift in our leadership's focus on this area, and understanding the importance and priority of it. And then we started doing an annual audit with Via Generosity. And the first time we had the audit in 2019, the data came back. Nothing surprised me in the data.
Of course.
And so we're sitting, the whole leadership team actually was a part of the debrief. And our facilitator for the debrief was saying all these things that I had been saying before. But you know what an expert is? An expert is someone from out of town. And so our leadership team was like, wow, listen to this. This is great. I'm like, yeah, it is. And that's when it felt like we really started getting practical in our policies and procedures and goals and things. And because that first audit, we asked for a grade, and he gave us a D-. I never received a grade that low before.
Oh, good heavens. Did the future audits after that get a little better?
Yes, our last one we received an A.
Congratulations. That is huge change.
Yeah. So, and it was a lot of just having everybody on board. Like, this isn't our organization's like primary focus, right? Our primary focus is sharing Jesus.
Right.
And understanding that we need fully funded staff to do that well for the long haul. And so so that's made a big difference.
Wow. Well, thank you. I think those are topics we could probably chase for the rest of the podcast, but I found a main topic. And I will just have to invite you back.
Okay.
Well, one of the things I wanted to circle back to, and I think it is maybe one of the most felt struggles, which is the aspect of time when it comes to staff in the field, working in ministry, and trying to carve out time for support raising. And I do agree, if you make time a priority for partnership development from day one, it's easiest to keep it there.
You're right.
It's a lot harder to try and steal time later. But how much time are we talking? What does this look like for you as you coach new staff through this?
Yeah. So in our organization, our policy is 10 to 20% of your work time. So if you work 40 hours a week, if you're full-time, that's 4 to 8 hours per week. If you work half-time at 20 hours, 2 to 4 hours per week. So I like 10% as a nice baseline because the math is easy.
Yes.
That makes it easy. So getting that time, and when you're scheduling that time, like depending on the project that you're working on, or depending on your personality and how you like to work, how you schedule that time, I feel like there's a lot of flexibility in that. Because some people, like, one day every other week where I don't do anything else for that whole day except support, that's what's going to work best for them. Or that's what's going to work best for the support project they're working on. Other people, they can't focus for 8 hours straight.
Sure, yeah.
And so, okay, let's do this in like 2-hour segments. 2 hours Tuesday morning, 2 hours Thursday morning. And so scheduling that is a lot dependent upon what you're working on and how you work best, and what your schedule is too, depending on what your roles and responsibilities are. But the most important thing is putting it on your calendar. That's the first step, which feels really obvious. Put it on your calendar. If it's on your calendar, though, if it's not just I will do it when I get to it, because we all know how well that works.
Well, and even as you're saying it, I'm hearing just how much this topic fits a coaching conversation well versus a standard piece of policy or just a written guideline, because you need it to be flexible, because everyone does schedule tasks a little differently. Whether they like a long list they just work through in one day, they like it really incremental so they can feel lots of small wins. What does their ministry look like? So like what's that availability and time? And even their ministry partners, because it's great if you're available at 10 o'clock your time, but if that's midnight their time, it's still not going to work.
Right.
And all those variables, most people can, with sometimes needing some help, they can verbalize them, they can understand them, they know what they're trying to do, but coaching to walk in and say, okay, you agree this is important. Okay, you're looking at what you would prefer to do. How do we get these things to meet? How are you wanting to move forward? And for them to just have that, it's the accountability, but it's also the help. It's the collaboration. It's the not figuring it out on your own, to then sit through and, oh, this works for me. This works for what I'm trying to do to stay connected to my ministry partners. And I am now committed to doing it on Thursday at 2 p.m. I love that. It just seems to fit so well, because I would say more than the support raising process, ongoing partnership development ends up being very personalized for what a person's plan actually looks like.
Right. Right. So when you're scheduling, another tip I like to give our staff is use your last 10 to 15 minutes to plan what you're going to do at your next support time.
Ooh, I like this. This is a winning tip.
Because when you know what you're going to work on and you have support time on your schedule and you know, I'm going to write my newsletter, it's a lot harder to let other things creep in, because you're like, well, no, I know what I'm going to do. But if I don't know what I'm going to do at that time, then, well, yeah, sure, we can meet, because I don't really have something planned for that time. So using that last 10 to 15 minutes to plan what you're going to do at your next support time.
Wow. Now that makes total total sense. And it's easier to get started, to get momentum, to every time. Yes. So I guess I'm curious, do you have any benchmarks for beyond scheduling the time, but what you encourage staff to do with that time? Is there kind of a standard checklist you have for them?
Yeah, well, I have 3 buckets,
Okay.
3 big buckets of mass communication, personal communications, and then admin tasks. Those are the 3 big buckets that all your support work's going to fall into one of those. So.
And then is that something you're just walking staff through? Do you does Youth Dynamics have expectations for those?
So we have some best practices. So we don't have a policy on how many newsletters you should send a year, but we do have some best practices. And so the mass communications, those are the easiest. Those are the same thing goes to everybody, and mostly those are electronic newsletters and paper newsletters.
Okay.
So a big thing with electronic newsletters is most people read their email on their little mobile magic devices. And so what seems short on your computer screen seems really long when you're scrolling.
Yeah.
So making sure that that's concise. And if you're like, but I have so much to say, great, send more than one. So,
Yeah.
And then with a paper newsletter, I really encourage our folks to send at least 1 paper newsletter each year, because that will catch any address changes. The post office will send you new addresses, at least in the States, for 12 months. And that catches also people that maybe you only have one spouse's email address and not the other, or people who aren't great about reading their email, something paper might catch their eye more. So doing it, I recommend at least 1 paper newsletter per year. And monthly is a nice rhythm for electronic newsletters. But any combination that works for the way you want to communicate with your donors.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. So that was bucket number 1. Bucket number 2 was personal communication?
So this is something individual to the donors. So the most important one being thank you notes. So,
now, are these, what deserves a thank you note for a response, or what prompts a thank you note? That's a better way.
yeah. So anytime a new donor comes on your team, they should get a handwritten thank you. Anytime somebody gives a special gift, they should get a handwritten thank you. Anytime a donor gives a regular donor gives a special gift above and beyond their regular giving, they should get a thank you note. Anytime somebody increases their monthly amount, they should get a thank you note. When someone leaves your team, and this isn't just an expired credit card, like you've had a talk with them and they know that for whatever reason they have to leave, they should get a thank you note thanking them for the impact that they have made through their giving.
I love that.
So thank you notes is the best habit for personal communications that we can build.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's something that after we live with support for a while, we lose how impactful it was for people to say yes. I mean, it's still impactful when someone new says yes, but we forget that these are people saying yes every single month, every single quarter, every single year, that they are continuing to be willing to be generous. And that is profound, honestly. And it can become white noise, I think, as we just live on support. And so just remembering that that is something worth appreciating.
Yeah. And then with those personal communications, you might also need to raise some new funds. And again, we're not doing that in a mass communication. We're doing that in a personal way.
Music to my ears.
Of the same process as initial fundraising. Setting up an appointment, inviting somebody to increase or to come on, following up and thanking. So that process is pretty much the same as the initial fundraising.
That makes sense. They should be well practiced with it.
Right.
Anything else in that bucket, or should we move on to the third one? Because I'm just curious.
Other things in the personal communication bucket, things like sending cards or postcards. I really love postcards because you only have to write that much. So they don't take much time. But who doesn't like to receive a postcard in the mail? Or donor gifts. That's another one. And a side note on donor gifts, they don't have to be at Christmas. Sometimes we think, I have to do a Christmas gift. And we put extra pressure on ourselves. We can send a thank you gift any time of the year. So I had a pastor once who said, Easter is like Super Bowl Sunday for Christians, only our team wins. And so I do Easter gifts for my donors. So, and I know what it's like to have a winning Super Bowl team because I live in Washington State. Go Hawks!
I might just move this ahead to the third bucket then, which is admin, correct?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
what falls into that?
So
besides
that's
just everything else.
Right. But we want to make sure we're keeping good records of our donors, checking giving patterns, seeing like, did somebody increase? Did somebody decrease? Did somebody stop? Did someone give a special gift? All of those things are really important. And having a system that we update regularly, that's the habit we want to build with our admin, is keeping notes on our donors. So we don't have to remember that donors Bob and Sally have a dog named Spot. Like, I've got it written down, so next time I can ask about how's Spot doing, if that is a really important thing. Or how are your kids at soccer? Like, they were playing soccer last time. How's soccer season going? Things like that, so that I can continue those conversations with my donors whom I care about, and my brain only holds so much information. So making sure I'm updating that, and I'm seeing, when I'm checking giving patterns, when I see lapsed donors, that's something, because sometimes it can, oh no, they didn't give, freak out. When most of the time, their credit card's just expired. But they still think they're giving, because they didn't notice that their credit card expired. And so calling a lapsed donor, checking in with them, caring well for them, and if they want to start again, getting them that information, which is most lapsed donors don't even realize that they have lapsed, honestly.
Oh, absolutely. And I would say that personal connection is so, so important. So what I notice is, like, when there is a lapsed donor, our finance team is fabulous. They will send a personal email out, and it is not until I text them that anything gets done. When I text my partners, and it's just like, hey, I saw the email, because I get CC'd, and it's a chance for me also to be caring, not just, yo, you can fix that.
Right.
But it's a chance to say, hey, I wanted to make sure everything was okay. It probably is just an expired card, but if not, I really would like to make sure everything's okay with you. And that just opens them to say, oh, we're so sorry. Or I think it has happened at least once that, of course, something did happen, that they were needing to cancel, and life was just a little overwhelming that they hadn't gotten to me yet. I'm like, that's understandable. Yeah. Well, now I can be praying. Now we're connected. Right. Now it's on my list of, like, when to follow up in a couple years to circle back with you. But that personal connection is so important. Even if your organization is doing something, is notifying, that does not replace the impact and the success of you actually communicating personally with your partners. Yeah,
exactly. I guess you mentioned in there, and this can fall into pretty much any of those buckets, is spending time praying for our donors. That this is also an important piece of our support work, is spending time regularly praying for them by name, because we're inviting them to pray for us, and we want to also be praying for them. And I mean, there's lots of ways to do that. I know some people who do like 2 every day, or 10 a week, or the whole list once a month. So there's no wrong when it comes to prayer. But again, that's a habit we want to build in our new staff, of regularly praying for their donors by name.
I love that. So I'm curious, especially as this is something you're doing as you're shepherding new staff and trying to coach up leaders who are wanting to start these practices. Is there any kind of tips you have for the leaders trying to move forward with this?
Yeah. So I think, again, the biggest thing is the habits our new staff start with are the habits they're going to stay with. So what are those habits you want your new staff to start with? And thinking through how does this work in my ministry context? What makes sense? Do we have an organizational policy on how much time should be spent on support? How can I encourage our staff to do that and keep this in the forefront? How can I encourage our leadership to make sure they and their staff are doing this? And and then are there other pieces I want to be continually teaching on? So, and like I said, I have a whole training I take our new staff through in 6 lessons, but there's a lot of ways to do that. Maybe you have an annual staff conference and you can teach some of this there, or VIA has the breakaway, which is a great for, that's a little bit more for if you need to raise some funds, but still a fantastic training on getting this as a regular piece. Or a email that goes out regularly to staff with tips for fundraising and ongoing communications. So there's a lot of options on to how to keep this going. The important thing is to remind everyone that this is a good use of their work time regularly and help build those healthy habits.
I love that. Yeah, it's I think I've seen it on the other side of teams and organizations struggling to hold on to that vision when they didn't start with those habits. And it is hard. Once ministry gets rolling, once you already have kind of your organizational rhythms in place, to try and put something in as like a regular ongoing occurrence that doesn't get missed takes a lot of effort. A lot.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any kind of final thought to leave with us, Sarah? I have loved this. I've loved this topic, this idea, this approach. I hope it's something that a lot of leaders can run with.
Yeah. Again, the habits our staff start with are the habits they will stay with. And so helping them build those healthy support habits at the beginning will help them keep them for the long haul. So that ultimately more people can hear about Jesus as our staff are healthy in their positions for a long time.
I love that. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today, for giving us, I think, some tracks to run on when it comes to, I think, at least a year of staff growth that we often overlook.
Yeah.
And I think instead it is a year of incredible opportunity. So thank you for bringing your experience and the change that you have personally been leading in your organization to us. It has been just a gem of a time with you. I've loved this.
Me too. Thank you very much, Callie, for this opportunity.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, listeners, and I hope you are able to move forward not just on your own partnership journey, but helping your staff as well. Join us next time.